summer's coming to an end, and with that, the weather's starting to set in. So today, let's look at a couple more shelter setups. We've looked at all kinds of different shelter setups with a tarp here at farakanna. Some of them have been a little bit more experimental, some variations on things. Today we're going to look at something super traditional, super simple. We're going to take this big 4x4 DD and we're going to make an A-frame. Okay, so first things first, we need to go find our location. So we're going to go find our spot where we're looking for something very specific. Let's go see if we can find it. What we're looking for in an ideal world are 6 evenly distributed trees. Now this may or may not be easy to find. We'll go for a bit of potter, see what we can do. Before we do that though, we need to talk a little bit about this. This is the big 4x4 tarp that we always keep in the dry bag. This got absolutely wet through recently, so it's all taken apart. It's not attached to the ridgeline and the prussics are no longer on it, so we're going to need to put all that back together. So when we come to put it back, we can put it back in a way that it makes it quick deploy next time out, and hopefully it's never actually going to touch the ground. Speaking of putting things away sensibly, what we're going to do is we're going to try and implement a different quick release knot on some of the guys as well. We'll talk about that more as we go on. The reason we say we want 6 trees is because we're going to try and fly this A-frame so it's not going to stake down to the ground. That way it gives us a little bit more clearance up ahead. Let's go. Okay, so first things first, let's open up the dry bag, start getting everything put back together. Ridgeline. So we're going to take our hang and that bow line that we keep on each side, give it a big pull, head high. Then we're going to take our line, walk it across to our other anchor point. So ordinarily, the tarp would still be attached to the ridge line. However, like we were saying, everything got wet, so it needed to be dried. So everything's been disassembled. What we're going to do is put it all back together. So when we come to reuse this next time, it's a lot less setup involved, it's a lot quicker, and in case of inclement weather, like the tarp itself's never actually going to touch the ground. As always, we're just going to tidy up our little camp area, removing those hazards for ourselves. Okay, so now we're going to remove the tarp from the bag, we're going to find the centre seam and we're going to line that up with our ridge line. So all you've missed is we've found the centre seam, thrown it over the ridge line. The reason we want to find the centre seam is because that's more reinforced. That follows the line of our ridge line up to our eyelet. We just toggled that off, that goes in there. And then using that prussic, we're going to pull tight. And this is where we're at. The reason I tend to throw the tarp over the ridge line rather than feeding it through the eyelets is if you tension out the ends, you don't tend to get that dip that you can get if you're just using the eyelets. We'll notice on this big tarp as well, I've kept all the guys attached to it. This has been a habit of mine for a really long time before we started toggling things off. And you can see why, like the wear and tear on that eyelet is just unreal. But because the guys are still attached to it and they're all hanked up, it means that we can just walk our line over to our next anchor point and get it done. So we've got our first corner tied out, and this time we've used a Siberian hitch. Let's go see if we can see how we do that on the next corner. So we've walked our line over to our next anchor point and we've run out of line. So that's why it's always really important to keep an extra hank of cord with you. All we're going to do is attach these two together, then we'll look at that Siberian hitch. So all I've done is taken both ends of the line underneath my left hand, nipped the two strands together. Now, tuck those fingers in, the line goes around those. Imagine this is like a gun. We're never going to point a gun back on ourselves, so it goes underneath and back over the line. The working end just pulls through. And then just like that mooring hitch, it's adjustable to give us extra tension on that line, which has now given us that slight pitch to our tarp. that's going to protect us from the rain. And like we talked about flying that tarp, that means that we've got plenty of coverage overhead and we've got room to walk in and out freely. We're not hunched over, we're not bending down, we're not hurting our back, especially if we're here for the day. Now, admittedly, our guys are tied out a little bit high. Some of them are more like shoulder height. In an ideal world, they want to be more like waist, just so you've got a more steeper pitch, just in case it does rain. However, we're working with the trees that we've got. But we're not staying for the day though. So what we need to do now is pack up. We're going to look at a way of putting this back in a way that makes it dead easy to get back out. Quick deploy, no messing. And that starts with the knots on our guys. Hopefully, they're all quick release. Once we've undone all our hitches, we need to hank our line back up. Because they're attached to the eyelets, we're going to start at the eyelet and I'm just going to roll that around my fist, around the palm of my hand rather. I could use that figure 8 method, but I find this is just as utility when it comes to this. Now, with an extra 2 foot at the end, we're just going to wrap it around the middle, form that little bite and tuck it in. That is what allows us to just walk away with the line when it comes to tying it back out. Do the same on the remaining 3 corners, and then we'll look at the ridge line. Okay, so we're pretty much back where we started. This is where things are going to differ. The tarp's not coming off the line and the prussics aren't coming off, so we're going to head over to the second anchor point that we tied, undo that one, and then let's go from there. So we started with the mooring hitch on this side, so it should come undone dead easy. We'll just leave that pull, that comes off. This next step is what's going to make it dead easy when it comes to put this back up. So we're going to take the hang of the line, put that in the dry bag. Now, admittedly, we've let this touch the floor, but you can do this without, especially if we need to be. It's quite dry today. So we're up to where our ridge line meets our tarp. We're up to the prussics. Everything stays on. We're just going to leave those there. Grab the 2 corners and stuff it in the bag. What we can do now is just keep walking towards our first anchor point, stuffing as we go. Without our equipment touching the floor. At this point now, all we need to do is undo that first hitch, making sure that this is the last thing that goes in the dry bag. What that allows us to do is just make sure that the one end of the rope is really easily accessible. When we come to put this back up, that's our first hitch. We just walk the entire thing over to the other point, everything's done. While we're just heading back, I'm aware that stuffing the tarp back in the dry bag is maybe a little bit controversial to some people. I've always found that it's 1, easier, and 2, because this isn't really like an everyday carry type thing, it doesn't really need to save that much space. That, and if we fold them, it can create weaknesses in the material where it's folded repeatedly over and over again. So stuffing it back in the bag just kind of reduces the chances of anything like that happening. So we're back up at our main camp now, we can catch our breath. Speaking of everyday carry things, like we said, this one just lives in the shed, it's big, bulky. It's not something that you'd want to carry around with you. Maybe next time round we'll look at more of an everyday carry type shelter, especially with the winter months setting in. But until then, go explore.